Good evening, everyone. I think it would be especially nice tonight to hear each other's voices, feel the sweetness of knowing we're all together. So feel free to unmute and say good evening to each other.
Good evening.
Hello,
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello from Texas.
Everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Brenda, wow.
Hi. Nice to see everybody.
Brenda.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. So I'm just taking in everyone, just getting the feeling of being back in this ever strange mode of being together, but so appreciative of all of your interest in being here, willingness to show up for each other, to practice together, to awaken together, to grieve together, to be sad together. It's sad times, myriad of things to be sad about. We have problems. We have racism problems. We have policing problems. We have so many problems that just endless. But we also, at the same time, in order to survive this mad and maddening world, we have to remember that there is the capacity for peace and joy, tenderness, compassion. And that's why we practice, so that we can come back to the most wholesome qualities in our hearts. Because it's so easy in the reactive state to the world's ills to go into a lot of ill will and frustration and hopelessness. But if we really stop and let ourselves feel, we can, even in the midst of this, be peaceful, be well, and be an environment of peace and wellness for the people who have to live around us every day. So let's just sit, attempting to just slowly allow whatever has happened today. And there are many things that have happened in our lives, our collective lives, our individual lives, just letting them all slowly dissolve into the openness of our practice. Maybe it's too quick to say, forget the past, but that's the direction. Just let the past fade into the graveyard of memory. And if you can, forget the future. Like Rumi said, I'd worship somebody who could do that. Just let go of the obsession with what's next. And just remember that the only real reality that's not just historical, not just our situation, the only real reality is you sitting here, we sitting here together. And we don't want to miss this fundamental reality that we are aware, we are embodied, and even if our body has been an enemy, the issues of our body, tasting, tasting the simple field of sensations. That is our direct experience of our body. As always, mingling our mind and body, letting them be so close together that they're just one thing, awareness and body. Awareness and not even body, awareness and sensation. Whatever those sensations might be, it may be vibration, maybe heaviness, weight, maybe tingling, burning, stabbing, itching, whatever it is, just the elemental experience, being known in awareness. And for once in the span of our day, not trying to do anything about our presently arising experience, just letting it be felt. Feeling the gentle stillness of our body as it settles into our mind, as our body settles into our mind settles into our body. There's a stilling. And within that field of gentle stillness, we notice and enjoy the waves of sensation that arise with our body's breath. We further empty ourselves of time by just being intimate with the simple experience of breathing in. Notice how we empty, and breathing out, how we empty. Coming out of the tangle of whatever was or whatever will be into the direct experience of life right where it touches us. Now, as we drop into this field of sensations, you'll feel the corollary to all the feelings you may have had today and over the last days. And so if they're really unpleasant, we just, as much as possible, we make space and we meet those sensations, that experience with a loving awareness, kindfulness. We stop doing, we stop undoing, we stop fixing, stop figuring out, and we just let ourselves be as is. Let our body be like a block of ice that's left out into the warm sun, melting into the openness of our practice. The only effort is to stay here, stay aware. And we just incline toward this reality. And no matter how many times the frog jumps off the plate, the mind wanders, the desire to think or escape, just keep connecting again with the simple, hopefully enjoyable body's experience of its own breathing. Long breaths, short breaths, rough breaths, smooth breaths. However the body is breathing, we use it on behalf of our love of being here. Just this moment, just this breath, just the sensations felt. We rest our weary minds in this natural peace that comes with being embodied and aware. Moods may come, and we let them move through like internal weather. Thoughts will come. We just let them go, let them float through like clouds. Everything is changing. We cling to nothing. let go, let be. The art of meditation is the art of making space for our bodies, making space for breath, for our moods, for our thoughts, other sensations, everything welcome in this field of impartial, non-judgmental, loving awareness. Just this moment, just what there is. Not fixing, not thinking and figuring things out, just letting things be known in awareness. Be the knowing, be aware. in the Tibetan Book of the Dead said, no matter where or how far you wander, the clear light is only a split second, a half breath away. It's never too late to recognize the clear light. In our tradition, that it just means come back to the light of awareness. Just be aware. No matter how long you've been lost in your imagination, how disembodied, awareness and body are here, waiting, hiding in plain view. Just be aware, sitting, breathing, everything in sync for as long as it lasts. Intimately feeling the duration of the in-breath, the out-breath, resting in the body awareness and the space between the breaths. So that we don't let our mind leave our body. Just this moment. Awareness, body. Minus the words. If you feel your head right now with awareness, this is love. Loving embrace. If you feel your neck, this is love. If you feel your shoulders, if you allow your attention to cascade down your arms to the tips of your finger, this is like a caress of kindness. If you feel your front body, this is love, non-judgmental, receiving of this front body. If you feel your back body, this is love, the loving embrace of awareness. If you feel your pelvic area, your legs down to the tips of your toes, this is love. You feel the whole body enveloped in awareness. This is love. Love this body that's so vulnerable yet resilient, carries you through this life, this expression of life, of nature. Just envelop it with loving awareness. So there's no separation, no disconnection, no rejection. So if you can maintain this body awareness this evening, I think it will help you. If you maintain it all the time, it will help you. Thanks for allowing me to remind myself to stay in sync, settled into the living present, a little less caught up in what was and what will be. Seems like the net effect of that kind of immediacy is a little bit more peace, a little bit less complaint. I feel like I can handle my life a little better. So thanks for the practice. I think we'll just, in these next few minutes, without letting your mind leave your body, I think I'll have Mary, who is our wonderful co-host, let Mary give you any of the weekly announcements and events or whatever. And just try to stay in sync as you listen. And then we'll take a few minutes to stretch and then we'll start the rest of the evening. So, Mary, thank you.
Thank you, Howie. So there are a couple of practice opportunities coming up in May. There will be a half-day retreat on Sunday, May 2nd, details forthcoming. And then there will be a retreat a weekend retreat the weekend after, sponsored by the Mariposa Sangha. And so I will include that link in the notes here. And of course, a word about Donna. We do so many financial transactions per week, per day, some pleasant, some unpleasant, some we don't even pay attention to. But I think it's important to remember that Dharma is different from these, everyday financial transactions that we do. Dharma is actually a practice. It's a practice that is designed to cultivate generosity, to help sort of dissolve those barriers between ourselves and others, and to bring joy to our hearts. And so, I really want to invite you to take this opportunity to practice Dharma. So I have the information. I will put that in the chat box, and we thank you in advance for your generosity. And I will toss it back to Howie.
Thanks, Mary. I just loved hearing about the awakening of joy. And during this time, we need anything that can awaken joy. Just the amount of assault on our senses. I was just thinking today that I think that for those who were very challenged by the last 4 years, I think there's a little post-traumatic stress. And on top of that, the pandemic, and then just the continued proliferation of killing of unarmed Black bodies and bodies of color. It's hard to bear. And it leaves our bodies in a state of don't know, and a state of fury in some cases, of fear. And just imagine the fear of parents of Black kids who, when their kids go out, and the kid, him or herself or themselves. It's unspeakable, the lack of safety, fear, the feeling of dehumanization that every single day, and that as hopefully all of us more awakened to that, just feeling the full effect of this systemic pain in our world, in our culture. All that's hard to bear. So all the joy that we can get, it's not cheating to cultivate joy. We don't have to just know our world by its pain. That is, I think it's clear that the Buddha said, turn toward the pain. The cure for it is to feel it, not to put it out of our mind, to let it, as Hafez said, let it cut more deep. In one of my favorite poems that many of you have heard, called Absolutely Clear, he says, and you could use any feeling, but he uses in this, excuse me, let me put my computer on Do Not Disturb. You could use any feeling, but he uses loneliness. He says, don't surrender your loneliness so quickly. Let it cut more deep. Let it season and ferment you, as few human or even divine ingredients can. Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, the need of the divine absolutely clear. Letting ourselves be tenderized by the pain in this world, not just turning away. At the same time, just coming back to Mary, cultivating joy. And Dana was the first teaching that the Buddha offered as a cause of joy to lay people. Before he taught meditation, he taught giving in any aspect of our life, and talked about the joy of thinking about being generous, the joy of being generous, the joy of remembering having been generous. It's just joy inducing. It just reminds us all that even in the midst of so much pain, there is joy, and it's important that we stay in touch with it for our resilience, so that we don't just fall into complete hopelessness and despair, sorrow. And I guess while we're at it, since the Buddha talked about the three pillars of the Dharma, that which brings us freedom and joy, he talked about Dana was the first pillar of the Dharma, equal to what he then talked about as the second pillar of the Dharma, which is Sila, or conduct, is living a blameless life, living a life where we are every day that we're thinking about, acting on, speaking, it's body, speech, and mind inclining toward harmlessness, non-harming, blamelessness, so that people giving the gift to each other, to ourselves, of the gift, what the Buddha called the gift of fearlessness, which means the gift of creating those conditions where no one has to fear you. Now that is an amazing contrast to the world where power is often wielded for the purpose of creating fear and anxiety. You can see it in the policing. And somehow that, just to remember as I talk about that's a systemic issue. It's not just individual police. It's embedded in a kind of us and them ignorance that doesn't necessarily choose the high road of love and goodwill and blamelessness, but chooses power. That comparing mind above, below, and equal, and the ego-driven, who's in control. But blamelessness reminds us that we're all together, that everything that we do and think and say doesn't just impact us, but it impacts the world. With our minds, with our actions, with our thoughts, we make the world. So that second pillar is cultivating kind and harmonious, timely, true speech, livelihood that doesn't deal in weapons and intoxicants that cloud our perception and bring such tragedy to our lives and our families' lives. To cultivate purity of action. So again, no one has to fear you. You create an environment of safety. Then the third pillar of the Dharma is called Bhavana. Dana, Sila, Bhavana. Bhavana is the mind training. It's the training of our hearts. And it's funny, as I looked down, I was seeing a quote that I read early on, and I keep it on the desk, along with a couple other quotes. I won't share them again tonight, but I often share the words of Shantideva about how each of us can commit to being a support, a protection for others. But the other one that has been pretty much since the beginning of COVID on my desk has been from Suzuki Roshi, and this was posted on the front door of the San Francisco Zen Center at the beginning of the pandemic. And Suzuki Roshi's words were, "Suppose you are facing a difficult situation. You do not know what to do. You may walk up and down, in and out, but this does not help. Actually, the best way to relieve your mental suffering is to sit in meditation. Even in such a confused state of mind and bad posture. In other restless positions, you have no power to accept your difficulties. But in meditative posture, your mind and body have great power to accept things as they are, whether they are agreeable or disagreeable. The awareness that you are right here now is the ultimate fact. And that leads to the value of mind training. I was talking, mind training is really putting just what we did tonight, putting our mind in our body, having them in the same location. I was talking to someone this week who has an extremely debilitating illness. And naturally, what we tend to do because we love ourselves is we want to do everything possible to assure that our situation doesn't get worse, our condition eases, that somehow we heal. And it's also quite natural since no one knows how things will unfold. We live in, the reality is we just don't know. And tonight I have to say, I don't know what to do about this world. I've been leading this group 36 years, almost every Tuesday. I don't have anything to say about it. I am done in a way. I don't know what to do. But that is the truth, that no one really knows what will happen and nobody really knows what to do. But there are these teachings that we can test out, not to adopt as a belief system, but to, as the Buddha said, ehi passeko opanayeko. There's this Pali chant that I used to do daily. It says, for those who are interested to come and see for themselves. And so what we do is we come and see for ourselves. And getting back to the person who's naturally somewhat freaked out and anxious and doing a lot of problem solving, you would think that the last thing that the person would want to do, especially when the body has betrayed that person to such a degree, in a way, it's not cooperating, it's not operating according to our will or our wish. You wouldn't think that a person would want to stop and put the mind in the body and the body in the mind. But that's exactly the simplicity, that training to, in addition to doing all the problem solving and even all the worrying, but to balance the inevitable agitating, anxious causing proliferation of our thoughts, to balance that. Just coming into a simple and direct experience of sensation. As Suzuki Roshi put, even the unpleasant ones. Slowly learning how to accommodate pleasant and unpleasant sensations. This mind training, this simplicity is the very medicine that keeps our nervous system regulated, our mind more settled, more peaceful, and even our body in a state that it can let go, it can heal. Because all the reactivity to our physical condition or our mental condition, all the reactivity, as much as it comes out of love, out of care, it tends to exacerbate the feeling of distress. So Bhavana, this pillar of the Dharma, is just orienting ourselves, training our mind to sit with things, even in our, as he said, even in our confused state of mind and bad posture. He says again, in other restless positions, you have no power to accept your difficulties. But in this meditative presence, your mind and body have great power to accept things as they are, whether they're agreeable or disagreeable. And accept things does not mean, it doesn't mean that you don't follow through with all the actions that might be helpful to you. But the actions have to be balanced with some openness to things as they are. And it is the immovability, you could say, of awareness, the awareness of a well-trained mind. It's the immovability of that gives us a place of trust in this rather vulnerable and insecure and trustworthy world. We certainly can't trust our identities. They're changing all the time according to who we're with and how we're being seen or how we're seeing ourselves. We can't trust our bodies other than as an anchor to the living present, because our bodies are aging or not cooperating. We obviously can't trust our thinking minds that are often just discharging, proliferating, complicating, elaborating. But what we can do, what we can always turn to, rely on, and train is this ever-present wakefulness and clarity. Didn't know I was going to share this, but here it is from the Buddha. I know of no other single thing so conducive to misery as this uncultivated, untrained mind. I know of no other thing so conducive to well-being as this cultivated and well-trained mind. So it starts with dana, something that every one of us can practice in our lives, even during hard times. So give a smile, give a gift, give a call. Just bring and tune into the gladness that you feel, the joy that you feel when you practice it. It magnifies the feeling of generosity. And every day, let it be the hub around which you live your life, this commitment to non-harming. In the famous sutra called the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, it's a Nibbana is liberation, but the Mahaparinibbana Sutta is this teaching where it says that what makes it possible for us to even have a well-trained mind to practice bhavana is to practice non-harming. That if we don't develop that harmlessness in our thoughts, in our speech, in our actions, then trying to actually sit with ourselves, sit and be a presence for others. The Buddha described it as like trying to row a boat without untying it, row a boat across a river without untying it from the dock. Just goes nowhere. We're just agitated. But if that quality of non-harming is made strong, it makes possible the settling of our minds, even during difficult times. And it's the settling of our mind, it's the harmonizing of our mind and body, it's the clarity that comes from continuity of attention that makes possible the seeing nature as it unfolds and understanding and developing the resilience to be with the ever-changing, uncertain circumstances. So it all begins with having a good foundation. And that foundation of dana, of sila, of wholesome conduct, it makes possible for us to not just see more clearly, but to also realize the fruit of the practice is realizing, at least in the Buddha's teaching, it's realizing directly the four truths that all the teachings revolve around. The truth that this messy, painful, shockingly painful world is nothing new. This is how it is. And it's nothing new that it's hard to be human. It's hard to be any sentient being in this world. That's not an aberration from beginningless time. It's hard if you're born. And that our well-composed mind and our open heart from joy and from non-harming makes possible to turn toward the inevitable difficulties of life. And then to see that what exacerbates those difficulties, what turns them into a kind of mental suffering, is our chronic yet optional reactive patterns of liking or disliking, of grasping or anger. And so easy to fall into anger. And tonight, before we started, I stumbled once again in my big folder of readings, the question and answer from a saint. He was asked, "What is anger?" And he gave a beautiful answer. It is the punishment that we give ourselves for someone else's mistake. So our practice allows us to see these reactive patterns, see the cause of suffering. That's the second truth. There's stress, there's suffering. The cause of the mental suffering is this chronic habit of wanting things to be different, that express itself as ill will, express itself as desire, express itself as a chronic sense of dissatisfaction and incessant feeling that we have to become something, that we're not enough as we are. All these are reactive patterns. Our practice also makes possible for us to see the cessation of these patterns, the fading of them, the thinning of all the identity, all about me and mine, the thinning of the lessening of that ill will. There's much more inclination to kindness, a lessening of that chronic state of lack of desire. We can see that there is an end to the mental stress. Maybe the inevitable dukkha or stress that comes with being born sick, being sick, aging, dying, but that optional stress that the Buddha really focused on, that mental suffering, that's optional. And we can all realize that there's an end to it. And more importantly, most importantly maybe, we can gain confidence through our own efforts that there is a path. There is a way to be in life, in a stressful life, that is free and open-hearted, that is less contentious. And we can actually gain confidence in that path. So may we all develop lots of joy from the act of giving and all the different ways that we can give. Joy, the joy of what the Buddha called the bliss of blamelessness, the bliss of non-harming. And may we all experience the bliss of liberation, of the liberated heart that's not born again and again into the cycles of so much stress. It's unstuck from this endless flywheel of becoming, of waiting, of hoping, of figuring out, fixing. Learning how to stop the war. It starts with each of us. So anyway, thank you for listening. I'm debating, since it's 8:16 on the West Coast, whether maybe we'll just create a few minutes for any comments or questions, concerns, and Mary, you'll keep track of someone. You can use the. Do you want to explain it, Mary?
Yes, if you have a question under reactions, there is the opportunity to raise your hand. And otherwise, just put your name in the chat box and I can call on you from there.
Anybody have a question about the sitting tonight, the teaching, dealing with this painful time?
It looks like Kelly has a question.
Kelly, feel free to unmute and.
Okay. Hi there.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Howie. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I feel like you're speaking to me this evening.
Just to you.
Just to me. It's amazing. I'm recently broken up from a relationship, and I'm so fascinated by the sense of spaciousness in the way, and you spoke about it this evening. It captivates me because it's where I feel most free, and it's also where I can feel that grip. You know, it's like I remember somebody telling me once, it's not actually the absence of the person, it's kind of being in the void or the space that's maybe created. I mean, sure, there's a missing, whatever that experience is, but just this fascination that I have with space in both ways, the fear of it and the going into it and realizing, oh my gosh, it's the most peaceful place. So I just wonder if you could speak to the grip, the part that's afraid to let go, and just how there's that flip.
I loved your description. There's really not much to add other than sometimes there's space and it's full and it's satisfying, and other times what may come into that space is fear, and then it feels very much like an empty refrigerator. It feels unsafe, and that's really, as you describe, it's just a changing perception. And the good news is that you don't have to land in any particular perception, but just to feel fear when fear is there and know that that's a changing condition, and feel the deliciousness of the spaciousness when that's present.
Mm.
I would say by and large, when there is more space initially, there can be a little bit of having lost our bearings, or our situation has altered. There's a disorientation. And so at those moments, it's very easy to want something familiar or safe or familiar, all that. So it's natural in a transition period to have more of those gripping moments. And I think more you get used to the openness and the unfolding of things, then it's likely to be less of that.
Mm.
Not to necessarily expect that to be a continuous experience of openness.
Mm. Thank you.
Anyway, hope your heart is easy as much as possible.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Is that it, Mary?
That's all I see.
Okay, great. Great. So I'd like to have us, as we come to the end of our time together tonight, I'd like us to, if you're willing to bring into your heart mind, that same enveloping attention that you brought to your body and your body parts as we ended our sitting this evening. Let's bring that same loving embrace to Dante Wright's family and all the other families who've had similar experiences of their unarmed children being killed. All the other families that have been re-traumatized by these events, and all the beings everywhere whose hearts are breaking for our inability to live in love, our inability to live a completely harmless life, a human being's experience of greed and hatred and ignorance that drives our difficulties, to hold everyone, but especially the family of Dante Wright tonight. Because you know that millions of families are terrified, they're sorrowful, enraged. And we wish for everyone that their hearts be at ease and that they know they are loved. And that they know that the world is awakening, and that each person, each of us, will do all that we can to uproot the causes of such harm. We want to just shower them with good wishes, wish for their hearts to be at ease, be touched by compassion and loving kindness, that they may find some equanimity in their lives, some resilience. May all of us find a greater sense of joy and happiness, and have the causes of joy and happiness growing every day. That all of us have less suffering in our lives and the causes of suffering. That all of us find that unshakable peace, independent of circumstances. and that all of us grow in serenity, equanimity, able to bear the unbearable, to meet the joys and the sorrows with less grasping and aversion. And as always, we dedicate our practice. We gather all the fruits of our practice, all the blessings, all the goodness, all the meritorious actions, everything. We gather it together and we just dedicate it again and again to everyone. And remember that we don't exist alone apart from each other. We're in this together. May all beings be touched by compassion. May all beings be liberated. Thank you all for sticking around. Please feel free to unmute and say